All right, we're here for a new year 2024 EV Obsession show. I'm Zach Shahan, CEO of Clean Technica, and with me is, as always, co-host for EV Obsession, Joe Boris. And Joe, how'd your holiday go? You have a good holiday?
No,
All right, so let's move on to the
no, we
news.
had it was actually quite nice. We had at one point 22 people in the house. Just because people coming and going, and
That's
we had all the
insane.
family in from everywhere, Margaret's family, my family. So it was a really big holiday for us, which is out of character. And anyone that knows me, I don't want 22 people around, man. That's a
That's
lot of
oh,
people.
see, that's
Doesn't
funny
matter who
because
they
you
are.
come across as someone who would love to have a lot of people around, but yeah, probably that's
Yeah.
compensating for
Well, if I had an audience, if I was on a stage and there were 22,000 people, I'd be very comfortable. But that's very one-sided.
22
Now
people.
I have to
If
like,
we had 22 people in our house, we have like five squashed in the Harry Potter closet under the stairs.
yeah, that's the way to
It'd be
do
like,
it.
all right. All right. Well, we have a lot of fun, exciting EV sales news in particular is what we're focusing on for this episode. And then we've got another episode, a short one coming as a preview for CES 2024 because you will be at CES in Las Vegas and there's always a lot there. So we're going to see what we have to talk about with that. But let's go ahead and I'll share the screen here and we get into one of the biggest EV stories, I think, in a long time. It's really we knew it was coming. We talked about it a bit. I when we talked about it before, I think I was estimating it would happen like Q2 or 3 of 2024. That
Go back
BYD.
and watch the tape. You said Q1 or Q2 of 2025.
Oh, really? Yeah. Did I?
I don't know. Go
I'm not
back and
sure. I
watch the
feel I
tape.
feel like it was mid. And there's a Chinese New Year slowdown. Sales get drop off a lot in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But Tesla also has big sales at the end of the year, typically. And wasn't sure if BYD would have enough to pass Tesla that quickly. Wasn't really expecting it to do so quickly. But it did in the fourth quarter. BYD shot past Tesla as the number one BEV full electric vehicle seller in the world. That's not plug-in vehicles. This is full electrics. They've been ahead of Tesla for plug-ins for a long time. But I did some articles on this, followed up, did one like 4 days before the end of the new year saying, hey, this looks like it's gonna happen actually.
Yes.
And then it did. And it still surprised some people who work in the EV industry, who know the industry well, thought BYD was still just ahead in plug-in sales, not full electric sales. So it's like it still needs to get out there more, or I mean, it hasn't gotten all everywhere, but it's definitely. I know it stings for Tesla fans. I'm a Tesla fan. But I'm also sort of neutral. I'm a BYD fan. I'm an EV fan. I am a Tesla shareholder, not a BYD shareholder. So I know it can sting a bit for Tesla, like they're not number one anymore, and there's a lot of like, you know, but BYD sells cheaper, blah blah. I don't really like this. Look, when Tesla was number one, we sung their praises for being number one. They deserved it fully. BYD deserves fully the praise of being the number one full electric vehicle producer in the world, not even mentioning buses and trucks. And but the thing that stood out to me was this chart. When I put the chart together for past 2 years quarterly sales charts, you just see BYD's rise. It was well below Tesla in Q1 2022, and it rose so steeply, basically like Tesla is supposed to be doing. And Tesla rose, but not that steeply. And I think this is a big testament to like just BYD's approach, how good and effective it was, and how well it's working.
Well, let's also consider another thing that you and I talk about quite frequently, which is the idea of natural limits on the market, right? There are a whole lot of used Model 3s, a whole lot of used Model Ys out there that look pretty similar for most people. They're not going to be able to tell the difference between a model year here or a model year there. There are a ton of people who, if they are going to go get a Tesla, they might wake up one Saturday and say, this is it, I'm going to go buy a Tesla. Well, they can't really do that if they place an order through the website and they got to wait 3 months. But hey, the Porsche dealer down the road has one with 15,000 miles on it that I can buy today. Hey, the Toyota store, the Lexus store has a couple of Model Ys. I'll go check those out. There's
Well,
a lot of those on the secondary market now, and you don't have to buy new. You can
oh, the
get that
used.
kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is these BYDs are, a lot of them, new models that have debuted in the last year or two. The Tesla Model S, it debuted in 2009. The first time we saw the Model 3, I believe, was end of 2015 or early 2016. That's now 8 years ago. So for the last 8 years, we really haven't seen a new Tesla, at least a new Tesla concept, come to the road, except for the Cybertruck. And man, there's precious few of those out there yet.
Well, it's interesting if you go back, a decade with the Model S. So the Model S is still on the market. The BYD was selling the E6 back then. The BYD is not promoting or selling. I mean, it's got a whole different lineup. And one thing one commenter noted was that, yeah, Tesla might, come up with new models and iterate quickly enough to match or beat legacy automakers. But in China, this is rapid. You got to come out with new models pretty quickly to not lose the interest of this rather maybe you could say ephemeral but huge EV market. So I don't know if when you were hosting so many people. We'll get to. I'm going to get to that. Get back to that in a second. But this is just the line graph of the same thing. So you
Sure.
see how it passed up Tesla. But I just find it more interesting looking at this trend because you just sort of see how BYD has so rapidly risen, while Tesla has not as rapidly. I mean, it's still hugely impressive. We'll focus on Tesla on its own a little bit, but the thing I wrote before and then in a second piece, like just highlighting there's the first company also to sell 3 million plug-in vehicles in a year. So Tesla almost got to 2 million last year, but BYD actually passed 3 million plug-in vehicles because all the plug-in hybrids. But the thing I
Right.
did here and in the lead up article where before the end of the year was I just sort of tried to highlight what BYD is offering by putting in a bunch of pictures of different BYD models. I don't know if you saw that, but it's like if you go through, the Seal, like wicked cool, like Model 3 competitor looking thing. The Atto 3 or Yuan Plus in China is Yuan Plus and overseas is Atto 3. The Han is large
The
sedan.
Han is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous car. Look at the inside of the Han. This is
Yeah.
like crazy, This is, I'm sorry, this is really appealing. People who say BYD is not selling appealing good EVs don't know what they're talking about. Like, it's selling really appealing good EVs, also selling really cheap EVs, and that's where Tesla is headed. So it's not like, oh, this approach is not as good. It's like this is exactly the same approach Tesla's headed towards. It's just Tesla's behind the curve on it, because BYD is selling them the Chin Plus, the Seagull, the Dolphin. The Dolphin and Seagull are really, cheaper, more cost.
Right. But keep in mind, this is a very inexpensive model, but look at that interior. It's
No,
not like you're getting something cheap and trashy here.
it still looks better than almost any legacy auto.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's just their lineup is amazing. They deserve huge props for doing this and doing this like sort of under the radar. Like people don't talk about BYD like they talk about Tesla, and BYD deserves a lot more credit. So I don't know, I just love it. I love this story. I don't know anything more to say on the BYD.
I will say this. I have responded to a lot of, let's just say, really misinformed people on LinkedIn about this news recently and on other social media outlets. There's a whole lot of people out there who are really upset by this that are not necessarily Tesla fanboys. They're just like super racist and don't like Chinese.
Oh yeah.
And it's a really strange phenomenon to have people on a Chinese iPhone complaining and railing against the quality of Chinese electronics while they're on an Apple product or a Samsung or anything else that are all made in China. So there's a rather delicious irony there. And when BYD comes to the US, it's not a question of if, it's when. And it's not a question of who, but how many legacy brands are going to go under because BYD is going to eat their lunch. And I would say right off the bat, I think if BYD did come to America, you could say goodbye instantaneously to Mitsubishi. You could say goodbye probably in a year or two to Mazda, possibly even Nissan, depending on how these are priced and what their credit financing looks like. But
Yeah,
they will take a lot of people's lunch.
one of the hand waving like things some people have tried to say is, oh, but BYD sells almost all those in China. And first of all, China accounts for more than half of the world's BEV sales. So yeah, if you're going to lead the global market, you got to be a top dog in China.
That's it.
Tesla now in the fourth quarter, for the first time significantly, sold more vehicles in China than in the US. So it's also selling more vehicles in China than anywhere else. Like this is, you have to rely on the Chinese market if you want to be a global leader. But the fact that BYD is more imbalanced toward Chinese market, I think is just a sign like, well, it's probably not looking back because
Yeah.
it's starting to sell, it's starting to find its way in Europe. People say it hasn't succeeded in Europe. It's just started. It's just starting. Like it's got to set up a whole network, a whole, brand, word of mouth, all this. So I think it's going to do well. And it hasn't even
Yeah. You're
gotten
talking
gone
about
into North
BYD, not
America yet.
Tesla.
What's that?
You're talking about BYD. When you say it's going to do well, you're talking about
BYD, yeah,
BYD is going to do. Yeah.
yeah, BYD. I think will end up doing very well in Europe. It hasn't even entered North America yet because North America's, I mean, the U.S. is sort of like it's a last stop. China and Europe are the
We're the
main.
Florida of the Western world.
Sure, and but there's also significant protectionism, here, for
Yeah.
Chinese products. But if it comes here, I think it will eventually do well. It's also just started entering a lot of other markets that are large markets but are underserved, especially in the EV world. There's a lot of Asian and South American markets that are huge auto markets, but BYD again is just getting going. So, and Tesla's in like a few other markets like the UAE, like rich markets, but it's
Yeah.
not tried to. Maybe when it gets to the cheaper Tesla, it will also go into these markets, and it will be an ongoing. I think we could have a really good race for years. I just think BYD's continual rollout of new models into new markets and just uh, rapid innovation, it's going to be hard for Tesla to catch up. If it catches up in the first quarter because of a Chinese New Year lull, that's possible, but I'm not really seeing that either because
So let me
BYD
tell you
shot so
something.
far ahead, and
Yeah.
Tesla's gonna have a tough first quarter.
Tesla's going to have a first tough quarter. And I'm going to say something else crazy here. I think Tesla is going to have an easier time growing in China than they are in the US because China censors X and Chinese customers are not subject to Elon Musk's insane, racist, stupid, homophobic ramblings the
Well,
way that American and European markets are. Look back at that chart and you
I
can
think they get
hang
all
on.
stuff
I
if they.
think you can correlate, and I'm not saying causation. Correlation is not causation. For those of you in the comments, correlation is not causation. I'm not implying causation.
Oh, you want
I'm
to go to
simply
this
saying there's a
chart?
strong correlation between the slowdown of Tesla's growth and Elon buying Twitter. Whether that's because the public has turned against him now that we know him a little bit better, whether that's because he's distracted, whatever the reasoning is, there seems to be a correlation. You look at like Q3 of 2022 and you see that like
Well, I think
that kind of rise and it slows.
there's an objective matter too, which we've talked about, but we just have to emphasize this. Tesla has a couple of rather, I mean, they're not expensive in the scheme of new car prices, but they're average to above average costs. I mean, the Model 3 and the Model Y are not cheap, and they're selling well above they're punching well above their weight. Like the Model Y was the best-selling vehicle in the world last year of any type. It's the best-selling vehicle in Europe. It shouldn't be at that price point selling so many units. It shouldn't be at such a high sales number. So it's
Well,
not like
but why are you saying that?
it's just it's above what should be, it's too expensive to really rise. I mean, it's already at the
Oh,
top of the
it's too
chart.
expensive to rise much more, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I
I
mean,
get
you
that
could
makes
sell,
sense.
you might sell more, but it's like it doesn't have, I mean, the way Jose Pontes always calls it is natural limits. It doesn't have a lot of room to grow because it's not cheap enough to grow a lot more. I mean, it can, and people say, oh, it can keep growing. It's a great value for the money. I mean, there's a lot of them have been sold, and like I don't think you're not gonna see a Tesla chart like the BYD one here from the Model Y and Model 3. Like there's not the potential for the growth there with those models. They Tesla has to roll out. I mean, they got the Cybertruck, they got the cheaper one supposed to be coming at some point, but that's the path forward. Like they have to have more models, the van potentially. But I don't know. I just don't see Tesla quickly rolling out models like BYD does, and I'm still concerned that when it does roll out a cheaper model, that will cannibalize Model 3 and Model Y sales quite a bit. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I mean, it's already number one in the world. I don't think the Model Y is gonna dramatically increase in sales, and it could even stagnate or, nobody talks about this, but it could drop in sales. I mean,
Oh yeah.
like there's only so many people who are gonna buy. I don't know. I always think about California. Like there's so many Teslas on the road in California. You can't see that kind of growth in California. And it's impossible. It's literally impossible. So it's like,
Yeah.
what happens with all and what happens with all the people who bought a Model Y in a few years? Are they going to buy another one? Or are they going to try something new? I don't know.
They might. On that note, I have decided I will have a fourth XC90.
No, I thought you were going to get a Model Y. Well, that's cool.
Are you
XC90, so
high?
you're getting the XC90 again. So,
Not giving
so
Elon any more money than he's
One
already got.
one fun we'll get some now to some positive Tesla sales stories. So this one is just interesting that the Model Y passed the Model 3 in cumulative sales. I don't
Yeah.
think anyone's really caught this because well Tesla publishes Model 3 and Model Y sales together. I
They combine them.
use
That's right.
Yeah, I use various sources, especially leaning on Troy Tesla, like really good source, top in the world, I think, for trying to separate how many are sold of each model. And based on our estimates, the Tesla Model Y just passed the Model 3 in cumulative sales. And I think that's just obviously interesting from a historical perspective. I can't figure out when any model will pass up the Model Y. Of course, there's a cheaper Tesla. Some people say we'll do it in a few years. Like we had a commentator saying it'll be in a few years. It's like, nah, that's a lot, that's a steep hill to
Why
climb
do
to
you
pass up
think
the
so?
model.
You say this all the time, but why do so many people think this? There are people throughout this industry, and I think most of them are enthusiasts because I think if you're actually in the industry, you know better. But why do you think there's this belief that lower price equals higher sales? When in every case, if you look at Mitsubishi, you look at Honda, you look at Toyota, you look at Chevrolet, you look at Ford, every single automaker that has come before, with the exception of Ferrari and Lamborghini, and I'll give you why those are exceptions. But with the exception of the ultra high end expensive brands, every mainstream automaker, their best selling model has never been their least expensive model. So why do we believe that that is going to be different with Tesla?
Well, I'll just say I'm not really sure what I think until I see this this vehicle. But the idea is especially based on this. I don't remember what it's called, but basically, if you go down 10% in price, your market expands like exponentially. Whatever it's like expands a great deal. More, that's the theory. And so the idea is like that the ASP, the average selling price of the Model Y or Model 3 is still like 55,000 dollars. And if you had a lower price one with an average selling price of like 35, $40,000, this would reach a lot more a lot more people would be able to buy it and a lot more people would buy it. I In any case, I don't see this vehicle getting close to Model Y's cumulative sales before 2030 at least, and I don't, if ever. Like I don't, and if it's not this vehicle, like I can't see what model would pass up to Model Y in cumulative sales. So so yeah, just real quick though, the comparison here, you can see the Model 3's cumulative sales chart and the Model Y's, they're different.
They are
So the
different.
Model 3's is impressive. The Model Y's is like an exponential
Yep.
growth curve, but it's also like it should be hitting that other part of the S, the top S. Like
Yeah, it's like a
I don't know
sine
how
curve. Yeah.
high that goes steeply. Like I don't think it goes much more. I think it starts hitting the S that curves um sideways.
So let's do this. We're on film.
But this
We're
is
being
cumulative. So
recorded.
just to make it clear, like
Yeah,
this is
this
not
is
an S
cumulative.
curve. This is a cumulative. It's not going to ever go like that
Well, it's
because
not going to go down, but it'll
because
start to plateau.
yeah, it'll look more like the Model 3s, I think. I
Okay.
mean at the top there. But anyway, it is extremely impressive to look at how the Model Y sales grew.
Yeah, there's nothing to add. Totally agree.
I thought you were trying to say something.
No, I was going to say, where do you think it's going to start to plateau? Um,
Uh-huh.
because we're at 2.4 million. So where do you think it's going to start to drop off? How many Model Ys on the road do you think before we start to see a significant slowdown in uptake?
I personally don't think it's gonna grow. I don't think it's gonna I think it's at a sort of a steady state point now. I think it will grow a bit more in how much it can sell per quarter, maybe. I mean, I just I think it's at a pretty steady state. Like it's not gonna have much bigger quarters than it just had. Like I
Oh,
think
I
this
agree with that completely. So I think
I think it will
cumulatively,
stay as a top selling model. I think it could stay the world's top selling model for years. Like
yeah.
potentially. I don't
Oh
really
yeah,
know.
I agree with all of
It's
that.
hard to estimate. Like it's hard to tell because it's a newish brand. There are markets where it just sells so much of its sales happen. China, California. And it's like, where is the saturation point? And when do people start saying, oh, I'm gonna get a different model. I'm gonna try something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's
I
really,
think without a redesign, you're going to start to hit natural limits at about 5.5 million of these things out there. And I think you'll start to see you'll start to hit some real limits there. So based on how many they're delivering, that's what, 3 or 4 years away.
yeah, I think that sounds
I think you'll start to see it slow down. The growth will go from like
yeah.
20% or 25% down to like 5 or 10 realistically. And then I think you'll start to see it actually start dropping off in about 2, 3 years.
But let me ask you, so supposedly it's being lines are being reworked in China right now for Highland version of the Model Y, so that how the
Not
Model 3
enough.
not enough of a
Here's why. You and I, and certainly maybe not even me, but you have to be a Tesla enthusiast or a car person to be able to tell a Highland from an older Model 3 as it is. And
yeah.
I think most people would have trouble with that. Somebody sitting on the sidelines going, I'm going to wait and see when they roll out a new Model Y. I'll get the next Model Y. When they see the Highland, they're not going to register that as a new Model Y. It's not going to be enough of a change.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I mean, I've written about this or talked about it, and commentators have, made a long bullet list of all the things that are better and significant improvements in the Highland version of the Model 3 I think for a normal consumer, they're not, yeah, I agree with you. So I don't know. Let's move. I will say it's yeah. Okay, let's move on. Uh, so yes, there's no doubt that what Tesla's continuing to achieve is extremely impressive. So,
Sure.
I mean, BYD deserved that to be the lead because like BYD is the new number one. It should sort of cement itself as that. But I mean, we got several Tesla charts that created, especially based on some of these estimates I talked about earlier. I mean, Tesla's growth is still phenomenal. You just see it, in different ways, how it's sort of based on this chart, you see the Model 3 is pretty stable. The Model Y sort, it's risen, but it's actually the past few quarters, pretty leveled off as well. And considering where the Model 3 leveled off, I think it makes sense that the Model Y sort of levels off around that stage. Like that's its steady state, rate perhaps for a while. Then you've got the Model S and X, which are irrelevant pretty much in unit terms. And you've got a little thing there for the Cybertruck. You can't even see the color because it's 190 estimated Cybertrucks delivered last quarter, which was more than I was actually really thinking about. But then that's what Troy came up with, and I would lean on him for that. So it's funny to see it on the line graph. There's like a little dot there, sort of down at
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
bottom. But again, this shows better that the Model Y sales continue to rise, but
Yeah, while Model 3 have sort of plateaued, X and
yeah.
S have plateaued a little bit.
And it's possible the 3 rose more after the update and the Y leveled off, but I'm leaning again on Troy for this, and I
Well, the
was
question is not okay. Now, again, two people can look at data and see it very differently. I don't believe that the Highland caused an uptick. What you are seeing, that little bounce there, that downturn is when they shut down the lines to switch over to Highland.
right.
And then Highland came back online and it started to come back. Production came back to normal levels. I don't think what you're seeing is an uptick. I think what you're seeing is a plateau that was interrupted by an artificial dip caused by line updates.
Yeah, and I'm just saying like the number could be like 170,000. We don't have official data.
Yeah.
But based on people tracking the heck out of production lines, ships, different countries where you can get the registration data for most of the world, um, it just doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like the Model 3 is down here where it is, and the Model Y rose a bit, but how much longer, I don't know. But yeah, it's also notable in the US, which is Tesla's second biggest market, just behind China.
So savage.
The Model 3 Performance remains eligible for the $7,500 tax credit. The Model 3 Long Range and Standard Range do not. They're not eligible for anything
Yeah.
because they're using Chinese batteries.
Well,
Uh,
let's talk about this for a
the
second.
Model Y, all of the trims are still eligible.
Right.
So
So
don't expect, I mean, it's
don't
going to
expect
favor the
this to
Model Y
change.
again. Yeah.
So a lot of people have brought this up and they have expected this to hurt GM's launch of the new Chevy Blazer EV. And I saw some rumors out there on social media. I haven't confirmed it. I emailed my people at GM, but I haven't heard back yet. Or maybe I did because my notifications aren't working since my last iOS update. So maybe I have like 40 emails that I haven't seen yet. Regardless of that, it looks like GM is going to put some cash on the hood in the form of a $7,500 GM rebate to people who buy the new Chevy Blazer. So I don't know how big
Yeah.
of an
I was
impact
curious.
or an advantage that's going to be.
I wanted to ask you about that because, like, what does that mean? Like,
Sure.
if it can cut 7,500 off the price, then that should be the price. Like, I don't like. It's not like they're just magically able to
Stop.
print money.
You
Like,
can't
what's the
make that
deal?
argument after defending Tesla for years and their exorbitant markups and massive margins. You can't switch that card and say, "Oh, poo poo, bad GM trying to make a
No,
profit
no,
on their
I'm not doing
EVs."
that. I'm just like when I see something like that, I'm like, well, it's not cut like it's not going to sell for under, it's not going to sell the car for less than it can make money on the car. So
Right.
probably it had planned, okay, we're going to announce this as a way to stimulate. So, but it's not like they're really able to print more money and be like, here, we're going to give you the $7,500 because Uncle Sam isn't. It's like, no, I mean, either, I mean, like if it
No,
had,
it's a marketing expense. It's gonna go. It's gonna go against their marketing budget or against some other budget, 100%. And keep in
okay,
mind, this is something that we've talked about, especially on the used car side, on the dealer side, that because you are now getting a $4,000 credit on used EVs, the dealers are all just going to raise their prices $4,000,
yeah,
and they're still going to make their money, and you're just going to get $4,000 It's just going to go hit the taxpayer bill. We have criticized that before. That's absolutely happening. No doubt they had worked out something where there was an additional bit of breathing room in the pricing, giving them a little bit higher margin than originally planned because they figured they'd be able to sell enough at a transaction price that was $7,500 higher. Now that that went away, they've been able to eat some of that in. Their net cost on something like this is probably closer to 2,500 or 3,000. It's not costing them 7,500.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm curious to see how it does, but obviously for all of these automakers, they should get their batteries produced in the US as soon as possible. Here's Tesla's, quarterly. These are official numbers because these are just quarterly global sales. Yeah, same as we saw before, basically. Cumulative sales, I mean, still ridiculously impressive growth chart. I mean, any company in the world would love for this to be their 10-year growth chart. It's amazing, really. This is with the models stacked, Model 3 and Model Y. Model Y is on top there. And these are, again, official numbers. So this is the combined, although technically that lower line should now say other Teslas because Tesla decided to just group the Model S, X, and Cybertruck together. Like it just did a other Teslas category now instead of putting the Cybertruck separate. I don't, it's driving a lot of people nuts. Like this is okay, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you have waves of production and deliveries and all this stuff. Now you're a mature automaker. You're selling almost 2 million vehicles a year. Please just tell us the model split. Like, come on, this is ridiculous, Combining them is just annoying. But yeah, you do see still the Model 3 Y combined, continued to rise and basically on the back of the Model Y, I think. Here's what we talked about earlier. You can, because of the change in tax credit rules, because the standard and long range Model 3 don't qualify for the tax credit and the performance one does. If you take that into account, the performance Tesla Model 3 is now cheaper than the Tesla Model 3 long range. So, so it's like it's a couple $1,000s more, but then you get the tax credit much more from the tax credit, so it ends up being cheaper in net. So, yeah, I mean, you can go for the long range if you want a little more range and less power, but I can imagine the performance will see record sales.
Yeah.
That's it. NIO. We can move on. So we talked about clearly China EV sales a lot in that discussion. Oh, we'll take a break, actually. Let's take a break to remind you to
Oh, like and subscribe.
like
We
and
did it.
subscribe.
We
Give us a
remembered.
thumbs up. I remembered.
You did great. Let's play
And
Scott's ad now,
and
too.
yes, here's Scott to give you
Scott
a,
Cooney.
a better pitch.
Hi, my name is Scott Cooney. I started Clean Technica to promote clean energy and other sustainable alternatives, and for 13 years we've been moving markets. If we had a nickel for every time someone told us they bought their first EV, solar, e-bike, or fill in the blank clean energy solution, we'd be a cable TV channel by now. But we don't get those nickels. So unfortunately, we could use your help to reach a few more people. If just 1% of our audience chipped in a few bucks a month, we could hire dozens of great journalists and promote all sorts of climate solutions. It's easy. Just go to cleantechnica.com/support and sign up with a credit card in seconds. Cancel anytime. But we'll be sending out some cool perks too, so I think you'll want to stick around. With your support, we'll keep leading the charge. Thank you so much.
And we're back. Thank you,
I'm,
Scott, for
I'm
chiming
Scott
in
Cooney.
here. We talk about BYD and Tesla. There's a couple, I don't know, for me, I find them continually fascinating. Young EV or smart electric vehicle as they both call their vehicles. Companies in China, NIO and XPENG. Wanted to have a closer look at them. There's also Li Auto, which has been selling like gangbusters, has 3 models in the top 20 in China, but it sells plug-in hybrids for one, and they're behemoths. They're all like Cadillac Escalade or bigger. They're like huge plug-in hybrid SUVs, and I'm not a fan of it, of the company and its rise. So I prefer to focus on NIO and XPeng as the stars of the young EV startup market in China. And it's just fun to see track their growth. So I think NIO creates the most beautiful vehicles on the market. Like I absolutely love their vehicles. I'm not sure which I like more, XPeng or Neo as overall goes, but design wise, I think Neos look fantabulous, and I love the yeah, we talked about this before. So
Yeah, they're just great looking vehicles.
yeah, but if you jump to their sales charts, so this is the annual.
Someone zoomed in. We got the
Yeah,
scanning electron
you
microscope
know.
view.
So this is the annual sales growth from Neo. Just see solid, year over year growth. If you
Yeah.
look at quarterly or monthly, it gets a lot more complicated. There's dips and valleys, there's jumps, depending on when new models come out, depending on other issues in China. But still, you see the last couple of quarters there are really strong. Uh, some very strong months at the second half of last year for Neo, and then XPeng. Um, do some zooming in and out. Oh, I don't feature their models because they're not as pretty, but they do have some still very pretty models. But yeah, you see they're very similar kind of annual growth, actually similar trends in quarterly and monthly. So there's they're sort of like tied at the hip, it seems in some ways. And but the last 3 months of the year were really strong for XPeng with its attractive new vehicle. And I've got a comparison article coming, and you can just see like who's doing better, XPeng or Neo. It's just very similar. So
Yeah.
they
Doing
sort
a
of
great job.
like they trade positions at the top, or they leapfrog each other here and there, but very similar, very strong growth. Neo had more sales in 2023. XPeng had more in the fourth quarter and in the last month. So much better growth, I should say. And so at the end of the year, so Neo's growth for 2023 was stronger than for the fourth quarter. XPeng's growth for the fourth quarter was stronger than for the year as a whole. So it just but very similar kind of deal there. But yeah, we can talk a little bit about, I don't know how much we've talked about this, but XPeng's move now is the X9. Like this is where it's looking to get its newest sales boost. And it's a minivan, but it's like a minivan like no other. So it's really impressive multi-purpose vehicle as they call it in Europe and China more. What do you think about this as a play to, and first of all, comment on those sales charts if you want. Like, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about them. They're fun, they're interesting, but it's sort of straightforward. But comment on that, and then what do you think about this move as the X9 as XPeng's?
I mean, you can't really say that it's an MPV like no other when we've talked about like 3 of these in the last
I
4
thought you were
4
gonna
weeks,
say
right?
that. As soon as I said that, I was like, Joe's gonna disagree with this.
No, well, because we have the Geely, we have so there's the Geely, there's the Zeekr 009, there is the Lee Mega, which is a huge, we called it the Tesla Cybervan, because it looks like what the Cybervan should look like. You've got the Volvo minivan thing, which is another Geely product. Faraday Future has officially started deliveries. They're going to announce that in the next couple of hours. Look for that. We'll talk
It's
about a CES preview.
alive.
Oh, they're definitely alive. They've got billions of dollars. They're going to be fine. They're never going to be profitable, but they're not going anywhere. They've got some runway left. But again, these are all giant MPVs. They are loaded up. The Chinese market is all about these things, using these as limos for like executives. They get driven around in these things. This is very similar to like when we were in Costa Rica, we had a Ford Windstar that was all decked out. Actually, Warren Mosler, who's probably the wealthiest guy that I've ever had continued contact with, he used to get driven around in a gussied up minivan all over Palm Beach. So this is something that has been around. The ultra rich guys, the guys that there's this joke that, Gucci and Prada are things that poor people think rich people wear, and that's not the case. Rolls Royce and Bentleys are kind of similar, right? Like that's what poor people think rich people are being driven around in. Nah, man, the really wealthy guys in South America and in the Middle East, they're driving Nissan Patrols or getting driven in Nissan Patrols. They're in the back of minivans. You have no idea who they are. They're completely anonymous. And in China, it's the same thing. These guys, the ultra wealthy executives, people you've never heard of, they're being driven around in these things. And, that
Sounds,
is going to
sounds
come
like a
to
good life.
America at some point. It is a good life. You just sit in the back, you got your captain's chair. Sometimes they're massaging captain's chairs. It's fantastic.
Well, it's funny because you look at this, you think of it as a family vehicle for the US. Like, and it reminds me when I was a kid, my uncle who had they had a lot more money than we had. He had a conversion van, a big conversion van that it transported, the soccer team, the basketball team around in when and they had like a TV and sort of like this view in the back when it was like that was like a huge deal to have like a TV in the back, whatever, and it was just big space, a lot of space to put a lot of gear or people and you had a little extra tech. But I mean, yeah, it's a new version of that, which is, but what do you think about it as as a big sales booster?
I don't know. I have no idea what size of a market this is. I don't know. I have no context for that. It
Yeah, I
looks like a
found
fantastic vehicle. It's a C5 or a 5C battery, so it can basically recharge itself every 12 minutes. I have no idea how big the market is for this,
sure.
but I assume they'll sell 15, 20,000 of them without
Sorry,
breaking a sweat.
sorry for the scrolling. I did find a thing on the market side, on the market trends for MPVs. Uh, there was a link in here, I think, but it has dropped off a lot. So it's the same in China as in Europe and the US, or more. I don't know about Europe, but like the US, people have dropped minivans for large SUVs. So people have
Yeah,
migrated uh, from
and
that.
that makes sense. That's what people are buying.
And it's really when you look at the like interior, like your XC90. I mean, like it's the same idea. Like it's really the exterior, I think, that looks the most different. And it's just got that minivan look. And but inside it's like what's really significantly different compared to a large SUV, a good large SUV. I mean, it's very similar kind of interior, right?
It's tough because like traditionally with an SUV, you would have a much higher engine. It would be four-wheel drive instead of front-wheel drive, so you wouldn't have the flat floor. But now with an EV, everything's kind of a skateboard, with the exception of the Polestars and the Lotuses. Everything's kind of a skateboard, so it doesn't really matter. It's just a body, right? Like you could
Yeah.
put a sporty body on it, you could put a
Yeah.
minivan body on it, you could put a cube on it. The body doesn't matter anymore.
And maybe
The
that was
interior
XPENG's
doesn't matter
thoughts. Like
anymore.
we'll bust up,
Yeah,
we just put a minivan body on it, and we'll dominate the minivan market, the MPV
that's it.
market.
That's exactly it. And
And I mean,
good
my
for them.
question is like, I don't know. I'm a little nervous for them. Like, are people gonna want? I mean, I could see a lot of especially wealthy Chinese moms and some dads who are just like, yeah, that's my vehicle, this fancy minivan. But at the other hand, like the trend has been away from them towards SUVs. So like it seems like a gamble, it seems
Yeah.
like a bit of a risky move.
I still think you're looking at the wrong market. You keep going back to
I
this
know,
idea
I
of
know, I
like
know.
suburban 1980s mom, soccer
Exactly.
mom deal. Like,
Especially in China where they don't have.
yeah, none of that exists over there. Like, that's not real. This is a rich guy getting driven around in the back like he's in a limo. Like, you got to get this. Like, this is not a family vehicle. You got to push that out of your head. This is taking business from like Mercedes S Class and Audi A8. This has nothing to do with the Dodge Caravan or Ford Aerostar that you drove
Yeah.
around in as a kid.
Well, it's
You got to
funny.
let that go.
It's interesting because actually in all of these photos, they don't, normally they'll put the demographic they're targeting in photos. And here there's no clear demographic they're targeting. I mean, there's no people. There's no like there is one with like a stroller in the back. But yeah, there's sort of this, I mean, like a I don't know, but
But look at that. When they show the shot of the TV in the back, they're not
yeah.
showing it playing cartoons, man.
Let me see what they show here. Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is interesting. I would, it would be fascinating
If we knew somebody in China.
if they did reach a lot of uh executives, like if it became a popular rich guy uh vehicle. Yeah, and it is like XPeng has targeted lower cost end of the market a little bit, but this starts at $50,000, the X9. So it is clearly targeting, you know, richer buyers. So the Neo's, you know, basic new big model to to do the same, to try to grow its sales, is the ET9, which was just announced on New Year's Day, but launched on New Year's Day. But it doesn't, it's not a, you don't get it until early 2025. So I find it interesting that they're going to just show all these details of this really compelling new vehicle, which is going to be, could be their most popular vehicle. I don't know. It's really, really nice vehicle. And not, I would be worried about losing sales throughout 2024 as people wait for this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't I don't even flinch at that anymore, because if you want to order a rear wheel drive Cybertruck today, they become available in 2025. So I think this is just the new normal, right? Is you show a car and then you promise, you take the money and then you promise to deliver them something in 2 or 3 years. I don't know. That seems pretty normal at this point.
All right. Well, we have just a few stories here on just the growing renewable energy market in the US, and we'll just zip through these so we can get to a ZS.
This isn't renewable energy obsession. This is
Well,
EV
so many
obsession.
people complain, oh, EVs are running on coal.
So what?
It's not the case.
Every EV, look, let's put this out here. If every single electric vehicle on the road today was being powered by electricity that was produced in a diesel generator, it would still be more efficient, more economically efficient, more thermally efficient than running every car on diesel or gasoline today. It doesn't matter. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for better. The idea that it's all running on coal, so what? We should celebrate that it's running on coal.
But it's also something to shoot down as obviously false. Like coal has dropped, solar and wind.
It is obviously false, yes.
Solar and wind passed up coal. They produced more electricity in the US in October than coal did. They've not just renewables combined, but solar and wind alone combined, taking out hydro, passed up coal for the first time. I don't have exactly the chart, but if you add those two together, they were bigger than coal. So it's already the case that solar and wind are beating coal. Coal continues to drop rapidly, while solar and wind rise a lot. So 71% of new power capacity in the US in October was from solar and wind. Similar throughout the year, solar and wind dominate. Natural gas gets added a lot, but it's also a lot is getting retired. And a lot of the natural gas capacity is peaker plants that are just run very little. So it's a little deceiving there. But the last thing on the electricity front, there's possibly 200 gigawatts of solar to join the grid in the coming few years based on EIA's estimate, like FERC's, which is conservative, you know, agency. 21 gigawatts of coal to be retired. This trend is like coal is done. Like solar and wind have won. But yeah, that's it. So let's wrap this show. Thank you for listening. And yeah, if you like what you heard, chime in down in the comments and let us know what you think as well. Thank you. Have a good day.
Peace.